In the second part of this lesson, we're going to talk about the various types and manufacturers of the cabinets that are out there. For example, General Electric makes a cabinet that's a side-by-side refrigerator and freezer. It provides automatic ice and water dispenser controlled by an electronic monitor. The temperature controls for both compartments at the top or refrigerator compartment. Refrigerator compartment defrosts during every cycle. Freezer defrosts 25 minutes after 6-hour accumulated compressor running time. This is an example of the cabinets of the General Electric system. You have your temperature controls, ice maker, refrigerator doors. The mechanical components consist of an evaporator, compressor, condenser. The fan circulates air over a condenser. Air enters and leaves through the bottom grill. Dampers control the flow of very cold air from the evaporator to the freezer compartment to the refrigerator compartment. So the side-by-side, the evaporator's in the freezer, and then from there on, it gets moved by fan to the frost-free refrigerator side. Refrigeration control is accomplished through the use of capillary tube. The tube is attached to the suction line. Electronic control consoles with touchpad is located at the front of the freezer door. Diagnostic codes will flash on control console when abnormal conditions exist. If more than one code function requires service, codes will be presented in order of priority. Electronic control console is connected to the wiring into the system. The circuit is supplied by grounded service cord. Color code located where the wire goes to in each of the electrical circuit. Automatic ice maker controls plug into an ice maker receptacle for ease of service. Contains a wiring harness that allows any circuit to be worked on since the wiring is not foamed into place. Amana is another manufacturer which provides a side-by-side. Refrigerator compartment is on the right, freezer on the left. The center door on the left side contains an external automatic dispensing unit for cubes and ice water. The evaporator is located behind the freezer compartment. Compressor and condenser are at the bottom of this compartment as well. Air circulates over the condenser by fan and leaves through a bottom grill. The fans on the evaporator circulate very cold air into the freezer, and dampers allow some of this cold air to flow into the refrigerator compartment. And if you take a look at the blue arrows, you see the airflow. A capillary tube is attached to the suction line for a heat exchanger. Defrost occurs automatically after every 6 hours of compressor running time. The heater circuit then opens and runs for approximately 28 minutes. The wiring is located in foamed in place insulation. Numerous heaters are used in the system. The auxiliary heater is foamed in place and may be connected to the circuit if needed. Power saver switch may be turned off if operating in extremely low humidity areas. Ice maker controls are plugged into an ice maker receptacle. The solid state controls may be used for automatic ice maker. These controls are assembled in a single printed circuit board. The inputs look at existing conditions such as ice level, temperature, and power, and they are fed into the circuit board through an edge connector. Outputs include the motor power and switch signals. They're also fed through the connector. The circuit requires two types of voltages. Low voltage DC circuits operate the semiconductor devices. 120 volt line circuit operates the drive motor and the water valve. A thermistor is located in front of ice tray, monitors the temperature at the location and sends a signal to the solid state control circuit. This triggers a relay that completes the circuit to drive the motor. A cam gear mechanism provides ice ejection. Switches control the motor and the water valve and control and monitor the ice ejection process. Now, you also have chest type freezers. Their advantage is that little air is changed when the cabinet is open. Some manual defrost models require defrosting once or twice a year. To defrost, unplug the condensing unit and remove the stored food. Place a bucket of hot water inside. With cabinet closed, ice will melt and drop away. Must have a drain for evacuation of water. Wipe the remaining moisture with a solution of baking soda and water. Never leave the freezer open or unlocked because it's very likely that someone will fall into it and can get suffocated and freeze, especially small kids and animals. When unattended, chest type freezers should remain locked. The outer inner shells for Frigidaire refrigerators are metal. The evaporator surrounds the inner liner and is attached to it. The condenser is attached to the outer side of the shell. Hermetic compressors are used. Manually defrosted condensate water flows through the drain system on the bottom or side of cabinet. This is an example of the Frigidaire mechanical and electrical circuits. The refrigeration cycle for a chest-type freezer is actually a little bit simpler. Low refrigerant, liquid refrigerant flows through a cap tube into the evaporator. This refrigerant evaporates and cools. The compressor draws the vaporized refrigerant back and pumps it into a pre-cooler condenser at the back freezer wall. It releases part of its latent heat of vaporization and sensible heat of compression. From the pre-cooler condenser, refrigerant passes through an oil cooling coil on the compressor dome. Additional heat is picked up from the coil. Compressed vapor flows back to the main condenser. Additional heat is released into the atmosphere. The refrigerant condenses from a high-pressure vapor to a high-pressure liquid. The condenser tubes are in contact with the outer shell. Heat from the condenser passes into the outer shell, preventing sweating. Liquefied refrigerant collects in the bottom of the condenser tubing. It flows into the filter dryer, moves into the cap tube, and into the evaporator. The cycle repeats itself all over again. And this is a refrigerant cycle for a chest-type freezer. Notice everything is built into the walls. Chest-type freezers are available capacities from 7 cubic feet to 28 cubic feet. The evaporator surrounds the inner metal lining and is attached to it. The accumulator holds the liquid refrigerant until it is entirely evaporated. The accumulator outlet is at the top and leads to the suction line. The condenser attaches to the inside of the outer shell completely surrounding the cabinet. Note that the pre-cooler zigzags across the back of the cabinet down to the compressor. Electrical power supplied through a grounded 3-prong service plug and a cord. You'll note that the warning light indicates if the electrical circuit is hot, not whether the cabinet temperature is satisfactory. Upright freezers make storage and removal of food more convenient. They're similar in construction to the refrigerator freezer, but the insulation is heavier and the motor control is different. Again, just as the chest freezers, never leave a cabinet-type freezer unlocked or unattended. Frigidaire makes one such upright freezer. The outer and inner shells are enameled steel. The evaporator is located at the bottom of the cabinet. The wraparound condenser is located inside the outer shell on the sides, back, and top. Automatic defrost cycle is activated every 12 hours of operation. The evaporator, which is at the location number 9 in this diagram, is in the upper third of the cabinet. The capillary tube carries the liquid refrigerant from the filter dryer to the evaporator. The cap tube is soldered to the suction line, forming a heat exchange. Liquid refrigerant enters the evaporator, absorbs heat. A fan draws the cold air from the bottom of the cabinet through the evaporator, forcing air to the top of the freezer. The air is then discharged at the top of the refrigerated space. Cold air flows down this space and is drawn back up to the evaporator by the fan. A pre-cooler condenser runs from the compressor along the back shell of the cabinet and returns to the compressor. Refrigerant flows into the oil cooling coil in the compressor dome. Here, the refrigerant picks up additional heat from this oil. The refrigerant vapor is pumped through the main condenser, where heat is released to the atmosphere. Refrigerant is condensed to a liquid and flows by gravity to the filter dryer and cap tube. The cycle then repeats itself. Condenser is attached to the outer shell, warming it slightly and preventing the sweating of the shell. All mechanisms in the cabinet must be grounded. The cabinet is similar to a single-door refrigerator. The evaporator on the manual defrost unit is usually part of the cabinet shelves. No frost systems use an evaporator located behind a baffle. Fan circulates air through the evaporator and then through the food section. The mechanical components, again, in this Whirlpool model, include a motor compressor designed for low evaporator pressure and a forced convection condenser with supply and return grills. The Whirlpool freezer refrigerator also uses a wiring diagram such as this one. Notice there's very little differences and a lot less components. There's a style heater and a signal light that indicates that power is on. Condenser motor and compressor should be wiped clean at least every 6 months. Ice will build up, reducing insulating ability of the cabinet and cause the unit to run more. Ice accumulation in the freezer is indicated by a cold spot or condensation on the outer surface. Shut off the freezer and allow it to warm up for a few days. Maybe air leak. There might also be an air leak in the outer casing. It allows moisture to enter and condense on the insulation. If cold spots or condensation continue to appear, remove the breaker strips and insert lightly packed fine fiberglass to fill air pockets. The cabinet hardware uses cabinet hinges that are usually ball or nylon bearings requiring little or no insulation. The hinges are always adjustable. For child safety, federal law requires refrigerated cabinets to be designed to be opened from the inside with no more than a 15-pound force. Today, most refrigerators use magnets to hold the door shut. The cabinet should be carefully leveled and adjusted so the door's weight swings it closed from any position. Many units are also mounted on rollers so that these can be adjusted and it can be used to level the units. Look at the support pin at the back of the roller. Breaker strips connect the metal outer shell to the metal liner where the cabinet contacts the door. A wide blade putty knife may be wrapped with tape and inserted along to remove the outer edge of the breaker strip. So this gives you an overview of the various types of domestic refrigerators that are out there. It's very likely many of you will never service a domestic refrigerator, but it does not hurt to understand the procedures and some of the differences between domestic and commercial refrigeration. So take a look and read the remaining of pages of your book, do the end of chapter assignments, participate in the discussion boards, and then go ahead and move on to your end of chapter quiz, and then we can move on to the next lesson.